while comparing countries. I would like to define purchasing power parity as a ratio between currencies which takes into account the price levels in different economies. I know that some of my friends from ICP family do insist that the PPP is a price index. Thank you, Marshall. Yeah.
You're right as usual.
Thank you. No, but the true defenders of the statistical faith insist that this is a price index. Yes. Speaking in theory, we have to compare prices in different currencies and to weight them, etc., etc., as the result, which is a PPP, can be treated as a very sophisticated price index. I would call this approach PPP producers approach. So defining PPP as a price index, we use the approach of PPP producers. So this definition, I would call it PPP producers side definition. But this definition is familiar for a quite narrow circle of PPP producers. But speaking with PPP users, it's very difficult, and I would say really it's impossible to explain that PPP is a price index, because the PPP is an indicator nominated, for instance, rubles for dollar. So this is a ratio between currencies, but a very specific ratio, which is not formed at the currency market, but which is calculated, computed with specific methods, with taking into account price levels in different economies. That's why personally I prefer this user side definition of PPP. But in any case, to compute PPPs, this is a very hard work. This is a joint work of countries participating in comparison. And now the PPP's computation is being done within a global international comparison program, Global ICP. This was a UN Statistical Commission who decided to implement this, and this is the World Bank who coordinates the work in the world. Well, almost all countries of the world participate in this work, and for better coordination, the work is organized by regions. There are 5 geographical regions. This is Latin America, that is Africa, that is Western Asia, this is Asia except Western Asia, this is CIS countries, and these are 5 regionally organized regions, of the ICP, and there is an institutionally organized region. This is a group of EU OECD countries, a joint group. This institutional region within the ICP was formed because the comparisons, the PPP-based comparisons, started much earlier in this group of countries than the UN started it in the present form. So this is the region. There is a serious task to link the regional PPPs, the regional comparison results, into the global set of results. And CIS joined the EU-OECD comparisons, and since 2014, we do apply a special procedure which assures a good, quite detailed multilateral approach. So that's why everything that I'm going to present further, sure, can be done for the whole world, but I took this part of data, not only because the CIS-Stat is a regional coordinator for the CIS comparisons, but also because there is a very fruitful data for analysis, this CIS-EU OECD data. Well, and trying to find these subgroups in this CIS-EU OECD data, a special procedure, which we call moving linear segment procedure, was elaborated to look for these tendency groups. I mean, tendency groups, each group has its own tendency of changing of an indicators depending on the GDP-PC. Yes, this is the initial scatter plot. Well, the idea of moving linear segment procedure is to calculate for points. For instance, if we have 54 points in this our original set of data, we can calculate linear regressions for each 19 points in consequence. Sure, the choice, would it be 19 points or 13 or 7 or etc. This is the subject of analysis for a researcher who starts to analyze this. Well, our approach was and is as follows. We are looking for tendencies, which means we do not need sophisticated curves. We just want to catch tendencies. Well, if we suppose that there could be detected 3 tendency groups, I mean the weaker countries, the middle income countries, and the strongest economies, it would be better to take the quantity of points within a linear segment 1/3. But this is just a subject to analyze within research. Yes, and in our case, these linear segments, which we call moving linear segment, really show that 2 structural break points can be detected. Dividing the total set into 3 groups. Within each of whom there is specific tendency of changing of resulting indicators with dependence on GDP per capita changes. Well, I am not convinced that we would discuss the formula just now. It's presented in the paper, and if anybody would be interested, I would be happy to discuss it. But the idea of this formula, really, this is a very simple formula. The idea is that when we take each linear segment and we take the central point of this segment, the idea is compare the angle of 3 segments on the right of this point and to the 3 other segments on the left of this point. I called it structure break criteria, SBC. And when this SBC is growing, this means that this is increasing tendency, and when it's decreasing, this means that this is a tendency group with a decreasing tendency. So the local extrema of this criteria would indicate structural breakpoints. Sure, I agree, and I will repeat it as many as necessary. This is just an indication. This is not a concrete calculation presented here. So the same scatter plot of points, now we can see that three groups, we call them tendency groups, can be detected. The first one, the second one, the middle income, and the third one. Well, this calculation was made for PLI. PLI is price level index. This is a ratio of PPP towards the exchange rate. And we call it stratification in the context of Harrod-Bilasa-Samuelson effect, because we know that, first of all, the long name. Yeah, but it's Bilasa effect, but in 1933 it was Harrod who was the first to describe this quite in details, and in 1911 it was David Ricardo who was the pre-first. So then in 1994, Paul Samuelson suggested a very long title, Ricardo, Harrod, Bilasa, Samuelson, Penn, Wiener effect, etc., etc. So I use this Harrod, Bilasa, Samuelson effect, but this is now important. But the idea of this effect is that following the growth of GDP per capita, the PLI, I mean the ratio of price level index, the ratio of PPP to exchange rate is growing. This one of fundamental effects, very well known. So the calculations based on 2014 PPPs showed that these three tendency groups can be subdivided, can be detected within the CIS-EU OECD set of data. The weakest, well, it's very difficult to use correct terms. The weakest economy, okay, these are really weakest economy, well, which have PPP per capita, GDP per capita, not more than $28,500 of USD dollar. Well, they have a quite a not fast tendency of growing, of increasing PLI following the increase of GDP per capita. The middle income economies, which GDP per capita would be between 28,500 and 41,500 of dollars, demonstrate quite faster tendency of increasing PLI following the increase of GDP. And then the high income economies with GDP per capita over 41,500 of dollars, yes, the tendency is quite slow. Well, I present here the tendency characteristics, the T statistics and R coefficient. You can see that at least for two first groups, the T characteristics and the R coefficient are quite good. Well, the third one is not so stable. This was an example of stratification within the Herod-Bilasa-Samuelson effect, within the context. Now, we can see other examples. For instance, I mean Engel's law, formulated in the 19th century, the idea of which is, as income rises, the proportion of income spent on food falls. We can illustrate this thing with at least two ratios calculated from the PPP results. Ratio 1 is expenses on clothing and footwear, ratio to expenses on non-food and alcoholic beverages. On food and and the ratio 2 is expenses on household furnishing, equipment and maintenance, to expenses on food and non-alcoholic beverages. So the idea of these two ratios is the same. This is a ratio between the expenses on non-food to expenses on food. Well, the results are the same. Do I have time?
Yes, you still have
some few minutes. Okay. Well, the results are the same, and three tendency groups can be detected. The weakest one, the first one, including weakest economies, its border is $28,000 of GDP per capita. The second one, middle income economies, is from 28,000 till 34,000, and the third one, the strongest economies, is 34,000, over 34,000. Well, the same picture we can see for the second ratio. Well, in order to put all these ratios, all these results into one graph, we denominated these different curves by the average mean of each series. So we can see that it's quite sure that, basing on 2014 PPP data, the weakest group, the group of weakest economy, might be detected at the level of, well, this is about 28,000. The border between the second group and the third, the strongest economies, is not so strict. So yes, I also pronounce the content of this slide. I would say that this approach, we consider it as an important tool within a large list of tools for macroeconomic analysis, especially when assessing effects of suggested measure of economic policy. Second, I would like to remind that, sure, these estimates are not so strict. Some additional indicators should be used in order to detect these tendency groups depending on the indicator under analysis. And third, these estimates are based on 2014 PPP computations. Sure, many of us know that the PPP are computed, at least in CIS region, every 3 years, because it's a very, very hard work, and the CIS countries do consider, except one, Russia is trying or declared the computation on annual basis, but all other countries consider the computation on annual basis, but in future, not immediately. So, but sure, for, well, in some few months, the results for 2017 PPPs will be published. We would recalculate these procedures, and technically other figures will be gotten based on 2017 PPPs, but I'm convinced that tendencies will remain. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrey, for this very interesting and informative presentation. First, we'll give a word to discussant Luigi Biggeri, University of Florence. You're welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me thank Andrey and the organizers for inviting me to discuss this paper. I think that... this one?
Yes. Andrey, какие
Which one?
I believe that one.
This one?
Yeah. No. That one, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Right there, yes.
The paper presented by Andrey is a very good paper, and from my point of view, is very interesting both for the topic and the result obtained. Let me summarize what Andrey said. The main aim is the first one is the certification of 54 quite diversified countries, CIS and EU OECD countries, to obtain more structurally homogeneous subgroup of countries to better predict, that is the point, the effect of some endogenous indicator of the economic policy, increase of GDP per capita and possible systemic effect of the economic policy measure. And the second group of aim is to check the validity of the certification obtained in terms of Bilasa sum effect and law. And they just presented it.
This,
Okay. Which are the strengths of the paper? Surely the main strength of the paper is the data used, because the data used are very good. You know that the international comparison program produced the PPPs and comparable data of GDP and its component in 2005, 2011, and now is in progress the computation for 2017. CIS-Stat computed those data also for 2014, and that negotiation, that is important point. Really, I appreciate it. Negotiation with OECD and Eurostat and achieved an agreement to link the data at the basic heading level in order to obtain a separate regional comparison of PPS and GDP for the 54 countries. The second strength is the method used. I have written here adequate to the objective, because to do the work that Andrey presented, we can use a lot of methods, more sophisticated methods. But the aim of Andrey is to use this result essentially for the macroeconomic policy. And the three methods used are very important. Partially multilateral comparison to obtain a methodologically harmonized set of PPS to the US dollar. Andrey presented a paper together with Sergei Sergeyev some years ago, a very good paper, and presented the data. The second, the method for assessing the similarity of economic structure to the country that have tendency, homogeneous tendency. The analysis of cross-section Scatterplots and the use of linear approximation. The linear approximation is not the best approximation, but certainly is useful in order to prepare, to design policy, economic policy. And the last one, as we've seen, is a special moving linear segment procedure for identifying the structural breakpoint. The results are interesting. You've already seen. The result, the method allowed to subselecting three tendency homogeneous groups. And the validity of the stratification of tendency in terms of Bilasa-Samuelson effect and Engel's law is confirmed. At least in general, I said confirmed. In particular, maybe not all is confirmed. So, very few observations. The subdivision in the first two groups seems robust. Really, we have seen that is robust because in every exercise that Andrey presented, we obtained good results, especially for the two first groups. But this do not happen when we look at the third group of countries. The similarity in respect to the regression angle is okay, but the results depend on the indicator used and on the change in the key indicator. And they said use one specific indicator, but you can use another indicator, and in this case you obtain different results. So we need to be careful. From a statistical point of view, the correlation R and R squared are in many cases too small, in my view. You have seen sometimes too small is not more than 0.3. In this case, obviously, it's difficult to use this result to predict the effect in order to design policy, because when you have R squared so small, it's impossible to use for that. In the figure that Andrey showed, there are no impossibility to identify the country. As Italian man, I prefer to look where is Italy, where is Russia, and so on. But there's just a few.
On the graph.
No big problem. No big problem.
On the graph.
No big problem. Prospects and future work. Certainly, the work presented is a useful tool of analysis to be used for broader analysis, for practical solution. It's not necessary to use very detailed category. So 3 categories is enough. The second point is replicability. The experiment can be replicated everywhere, every time. CIS will repeat, I think, the experiment on the basis of 2007, as I said, that is in production. But in my view, need also to extend the analysis separately for more detailed component of GDP. Not only consider the general GDP, because when you prepare or design economic policy, usually you take into account not only the general data for GDP, but also for the component of GDP, the component, because are much more important if you do a policy for different, or for the enterprise or for the family. So you have to take into account the different structure of GDP, and considering that the PLI, the price level index of the subcomponents are different. I look at the data also for Russia and for CIS country. They are quite different for different component. So in general, we can use GDP, but it's much better to use also the component of GDP because are different in each country. For example, for some subcomponent of GDP, such as construction and machinery, I found a very different level of PLI And I think that if one country like to improve the construction or to improve the machinery, the investment in the machinery, take into account the situation of the country, it's very useful to have also information which is the direction, the effect on this. So I think that more experiment can be done, carried out, and the experiment could be also extended to other group of countries. Obviously, from your point of view, CIS and the EU and the OECD countries are much more important. But I think I suggested that at the ICP comparison, it's possible to extend this kind of analysis in order to give, for example, in Africa, in Asia, and other countries, and in other regions, to have this kind of exercise. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions to the presenter?
May I react to Luigi maybe with
First, yes. Yes, you're welcome.
Then, yeah, I would appreciate it. Well, first of all, Luigi, many thanks for your really excellent comments. I do agree with everything you said. Yes, it would be interesting to provide a more detailed analysis, and sure, I would be happy to suggest such kind of analysis for our friends in Latin America. Maybe Giovanni would agree. No, he's not here, unfortunately. Yeah. But we'll tell him. Yeah. Yes. There is one point which is also important. One specific point which is specific for me. As an official from international statistics, I am a little bit limited in suggest economic analysis conclusions. I have to submit data. I can comment data, even if I have ideas on economic development. Sometimes I am not in a position to suggest comments as an official, so but I believe we can do a lot of work in the way Luigi described. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrey. So, questions? You're welcome.
Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги. Вопрос, точнее, два вопроса к докладчику. Можно попросить показать слайд 6 основного выступления? Да, ну, на самом деле это видно и на других слайдах, но на этом тоже можно, так сказать, посмотреть. В чем суть вопроса? Вот если мы обратим внимание на правую часть, мы увидим точку, которая далеко отстоит от всех остальных. Судя по всему, это Люксембург, если ориентироваться на величину ВВП на душу населения, там порядка 100 тысяч. И вот возникает вопрос, не искажает ли вот эта точка сам результат анализа? Может быть, стоит ее убрать, потому что, конечно, удельный вес Люксембурга в мировой экономике, он, наверное, не такой большой, как у других стран. Кстати говоря, наверное, если эту точку исключить, это бы улучшило и статистические характеристики третьей группы, которые, как мы видели на слайдах последующих, не очень хорошие по сравнению, по крайней мере, с первыми двумя группами. Как удобно отвечать Или я задам оба вопроса сразу?
Можно оба. А можно сразу ответить, может кто-то прокомментирует? Мне кажется, лучше оба вопроса.
Хорошо, да,
будет
как
дискуссия.
председатель. Да. И второй вопрос, он перекликается с тем, что уже было обсуждено, и то, что говорил дискуссант, и то, что отвечал докладчик. Речь идет о том, что в начале выступления докладчик говорил о том, что вот этот подход, он может быть использован для принятия решений в области экономической политики. Вот хотелось бы хотя бы немножко конкретизировать, как это могло бы быть сделано. Спасибо.
Спасибо. Очень интересные и хорошие вопросы. Ну, в порядке формулировки. Да, это точка Люксембург. Все знают. Честно говоря, последние 20 лет, что я вот строю эти графики, размышляю над ними, мне всегда она тоже мешала. Ну, поначалу. И я действительно исключал ее из расчетов, потому что мне казалось, ну уж очень далеко она отстоит и очень влияет. А если она чуть-чуть подвинется вверх и вниз, она сильно будет качать этот финальный линейный сегмент. Я много делал подобных расчетов. И две вещи в этом контексте хотел бы отметить. Ну, во-первых, когда я пытался предъявлять подобные расчеты Люксембурга. Да, извините, еще один комментарий по поводу. У Люксембурга еще очень специфический ВВП. Он, во-первых, по структуре, там, извините, финансовые услуги перетягивают столько, чего во всех остальных странах нет. И, во-вторых, там есть еще одна особенность, что он производится в Люксембурге, этот ВВП, и приписывается Люксембургу, а значительная часть производителей живут в соседних странах, Франция, Германия. Так что вот атрибутировать ВВП Люксембурга именно с Люксембургом – это тоже отдельная задача. То есть вот сложная точка. И я начинал всегда с того, что исключал ее и строил разные оценки. Но тут две вещи затем последовало. Во-первых, подобный подход, когда я его демонстрировал коллегам из других стран, не встретил, ну не то чтобы понимания, а не приветствовался. Как так? Нельзя выкидывать ни одну страну. А потом я понял еще второй, мне пришла еще одна мысль в пользу того, что эту странную точку следует оставить. Ведь эта точка есть. И, может быть, именно благодаря Люксембургу можно говорить о том, что вот график, в частности, на слайде 6, ну да, близок к логистической кривой, по которой, как известно, на самом деле развиваются все процессы в экономике. Надо только выбрать участок логистической кривой, к которой относится рассматриваемый момент. То есть если... Тут, к сожалению, я не умею пользоваться этой штукой, как тут точку рисовать. Да, извините. Если... No, just a point. Окей. То есть если убрать крайнюю точку, то... Really, you're right. Sorry. То последняя прямая взовьется сильно, сильно вверх. И, может быть, это неправильно, потому что это будет иллюзия, что чем выше ВВП на душу населения, тем больше всегда это будет расти бесконечно PLI, что было бы, наверное, неправильно. Да, второй вопрос. Решение в экономической политике. Ну, если можно, я сейчас просто вот вернусь к этой картинке. Я имею в виду, уже недостаток времени поджимает, я имею в виду, что в каждой из трех групп, условно говоря, прогнозируя, что наши меры экономической политики повысит ВВП на душу, я не знаю, там, на 1000 долларов, для малодоходных стран при этом соотношение расходов на одежду и обувь к расходам на питание вырастет незначительно. Для среднедоходных стран это будет расти гораздо быстрее, приблизительно вот в тех пропорциях, как здесь указаны. И для опять высокодоходных это опять будет очень медленно. Вот это я имел в виду применение в разработке конъюнктурной политики. Спасибо.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? We have limited time, I would like to mark. There are no other questions. I want just to say that, unfortunately, Giovanni Savio, the author of the second paper, which should be presented the next, had no opportunity to come and that is why, as far as I know, the copies of his presentation were disseminated over the auditory. If we will have just 5 minutes to maybe make a brief characteristics to characterize the presentation. I'll give 2 minutes to Andrey Kosarev and then to Yuri Beletsky, the discussant, also 3 minutes too. Thank you. Andrey, you are welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Sure. Вторую презентацию будете? Yes. Unfortunately, Giovanni, who prepared an excellent paper, could not come due to force majeure circumstances. I'm absolutely not in a position to present his paper. That's why we disseminate his presentation. And it will be... Если можно, вы нам все-таки высветите, да? Ну ладно. It will be presented on the screen as well, but I would like to ask the discussant to suggest comments as we have very limited time.